And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday, and it is turning out to be quite the program I have scheduled for you today. About 8:45, we're going to talk to Representative Joel Guggenmoss. He's announcing his candidacy for the next upcoming election. And of course, it's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. This is the day where we talk about whatever you want to talk about. You see, normally during the week, you have to play by my rules. And, you know, really, if you're not interested in what I'm talking about, which, I mean, it kind of begs the question why you're watching this show, because you watch this show to hear what I think about what's going on. But on Friday, I want to hear what you're thinking about. And so if you want to be part of the program, the phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. Whatever's on your mind. And you don't realize the enormous risk I put this program under each and every Friday. And it's you are in the, well, you're not really in the producer's chair, but you're directing the program. You are in the director's seat, and we'll talk about whatever's on your mind. So the phone number here is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. My friends, it's with a heavy heart, a very sad and heavy heart that I have to bring you this story. You see, I don't want to start the Open Line Friday on a down note. Well, actually, it's not really a down note, but it is kind of disappointing. It's the kind of disappointment that I felt when I lost one of the greatest sources of material on this program.
Oh, I think you got to stop and take a look at what you're doing here. I speak against this because it kind of reminds me of that fairy tale Cinderella.
Yeah. Well, I am feeling exactly the same way. Well, kind of. The day that I lost Bill Henderson out of the House of Representatives, Bill is a straight up redcoat. I wasn't sad about losing that. I was sad about losing a source of entertainment. And the disappointment I feel today is, had Landon Brown waited one more day, just one more day, to withdraw his candidacy from the 2026 election, then it would have been 2,300 days since Landon Brown agreed to an interview on Cowboy State Politics and then didn't show up. But I mean, he couldn't even give me that one source of satisfaction. So it was 2,299 days ago that Landon Brown had agreed to an interview and didn't show up, which, I mean, I don't really blame him. I mean, why would he want to not match wits with me. I mean, you never go to a battle of wits unarmed, which is what it would have been with Landon Brown. But he has dropped out of the House District 9 race, and he's got and I'm not going to read his whole driveling announcement on social media, but here's what it says. After significant thought and reflection, I need some sad music. Do I have any sad music here in the soundbite bank? No, I don't. Maybe I have some circus music. Hold on. Let's see here. Pravda. No. Okay, well, he's just going to have to deal without it. I thought perhaps maybe I'd have, some really sad funeral parlor music to commemorate the death of his political career. But I guess not. And really, when you think about it, he doesn't really deserve that. But here's what he says. Since announcing my campaign, several major personal and professional developments have come forward that require my full attention. I remain fully committed to serving the remainder of my term in office with honor and distinction. I'll not have the ability to run a campaign effectively and efficiently while taking on my next opportunity. I believe it is important to make the decision now rather than later on in the election cycle. Translation, he's got somebody lined up to run in his stead. Blah, 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 blah. I sincerely thank you. Thank you again for everybody who supported me. No, Landon, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me a source of material on days where I didn't really have, a really good whipping post to go after. You have provided that opportunity for me, and to me, I'm very, very thankful. And I must say that I'm very thankful for the great state of Wyoming that you have decided to get the heck out of our way and stop torturing us with your rhino redcoat-ism. If redcoat-ism... No, I think that redcoat-ism is probably a thing, but I'm very happy that you're not going to torture us anymore, and you can make room for Eggsy Brown, who will make an excellent state representative. So thank you very much, Landon Brown. So with that news out of the way, it is Open Line Friday, and I've got a great lineup, as you can see from the chalkboard. Apparently, the Cowboy State Daily thinks it's important to defend liberal lawyers. I know. I mean, it is shocking to me too. But as if liberal lawyers need defending from the likes of the cow pie. But there's a very interesting article. Well, I shouldn't say the whole article is interesting. The last couple of paragraphs are interesting, written by Clair McFarland, in which she attempts to defend liberal Wyoming political action committees, but she forgot one little detail, of which I am going to be, I'm going to be overjoyed to tell you about it. Sorry, Claire, man, you forget details, which, I mean, this one is kind of convenient for you to forget. But anyway, so we'll talk about that. And then Trump is still very, very popular. And you know that it's probably more so than what the Communist News Network reported. But I've got that video, and that's where we're going to start. And then a little bit later on in the program, I'm going to play you a piece of an interview that I did with Harmeet Dillon in 2024, during the 2024 Republican convention about lawfare. You see, there is a big controversy because Senator Slithers Nethercott said that we need more lawyers to engage in lawfare, and now the cow pie is coming to their defense. Interestingly enough, though, it is only Slithers Nethercott that said the word lawfare. And the reason why the cow pie is coming to her defense is they realize how incredibly unpopular that term is, that everybody knows what lawfare is. And no matter how much they try to spin it, they cannot make it into something that it is not. And I mean, there's plenty of stuff in Clair McFarland's drivel. And, and here's another thing. I try to give credit where credit is due. And there have been a couple of times where I have on this program said, hey, you know what, Claire, that wasn't such a bad job. Not too bad there. Good job. And then she continually disappoints me with her rotten drivel. So anyway, I've got a piece from the Harmeet Dillon interview where she's talking about lawfare. and pretty clearly explains what it is. So we'll get to that. But we are going to begin with the Communist News Network and their numbers guy, Harry Enton. From Breitbart News, CNN's Enton. It's a myth that Trump is losing support among Republicans. And you hear this all over the place. I mean, there are several now pretty well left-leaning podcasters. You know, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. I don't know if you can put Candace in there. She's just nuts. I'm sure there's a robot that's in charge of the country right now, and it's a robot. Now that we've released the UFO files, it's probably a robot that was dumped off at Area 51, and somehow the U.S. government figured out a way to install said robot in the stead of Donald Trump, and that's why all these things are happening. That's the kind of crap that you get from Candace Owens. So I don't even know if you can call her, left-leaning or the left flank of the Republican Party, or even the right, I don't even know what you call her, but I don't know if she's in that group. But there are a number of now left-leaning podcasters, that are supportive of Iran and not so supportive of Israel, that are claiming that Trump is losing support among his base, and it's just not true. And if the Communist News Network is admitting that he has a pretty high approval rating among Republicans, then that's probably the case. But here's what Breitbart News says, and I quote, Thursday, the Communist News Network's News Central senior reporter Harry Enton said that it was a myth that President Donald Trump is losing support among Republican voters. Enton said, quote, as Indiana goes, so goes the nation when it comes to Republican voters and Donald John Trump. He absolutely still has the juice, and when you're a Republican and you go against Trump, you get voted off the island, which I still think that that's true. I always love Survivor, and in this particular case, what we saw in Indiana was you go adios amigos, goodbye, see you later. And to me, that is emblematic of what we see nationwide with Republicans. So here's that piece from the Communist News Network, with Harry Enton is going through all of the numbers, which again, if it's being reported on the Communist News Network, the numbers are actually a little bit better. So here's what Harry Enton has to say.
Lawyers are now prepping staff to deal with a Democratic Congress, reportedly giving briefings now on, here's the reporting, how to best prepare for congressional oversight as staff begin to brace for the likelihood of significant Democratic victories in the November midterm elections, which is another reminder of the struggle that Trump has faced with his approval rating, an unpopular war, Americans still struggling to pay for everyday living expenses. Yet, Trump-backed candidates still came out on top in a big way.
Okay, all right. Hold on a minute. So the lead up to this whole numbers game on CNN is, he's still unpopular with the Iran war. There's all these things that are that Trump is dealing with. So the lead up to this is, Trump's in deep trouble. Again, trying to downplay everything. All the news, the popularity of Donald Trump. So the lead up is he's not so popular. And then we hear what Harry Enton says. Here we go.
Primaries. CNN's Harry Enton running the numbers on this one. So Tuesday, especially in Indiana, showed that the president still has juice, still has a lot of influence, at least in Indiana.
Yeah.
So
as Indiana goes, so goes the nation when it comes to Republican voters and Donald John Trump. He absolutely still has the juice. And when you're a Republican and you go against Trump, you get voted off the island. I always love Survivor. And in this particular case, what we saw in Indiana was you go adios amigos, goodbye, see you later. And to me, that is emblematic of what we see nationwide with Republicans. I think there's this myth that's going on right now that, Trump is really losing support among Republicans. But compared to other midterm cycles, he's just as popular with Republicans as he has ever been at this point in midterm cycles. Right now, nationally, we're talking about an approval rating on average of 84%. In 2022, his popularity rating was 76%, actually lower, right, when he wasn't in the presidency. In 2018, the last time he was president, 85%. That 85 looks a whole heck of a lot like this 84% right here. The bottom line is this. Donald Trump still absolutely has juice with Republican voters. You saw it in Indiana, and I think that you'll see it down the line as well if any Republicans try and go against the President of the United States, who is still very much beloved by Republican voters nationwide.
Harry, you were also looking at turnout. What are you seeing in turnout? Why is this significant to this conversation?
Okay, why is it significant? Because we know that within the Republican Party, Trump has that extra strong core, that MAGA base, right? We're talking about approval ratings, depending on which poll you look at, 95, 97, 100% with MAGA Republicans. And here's the thing. They are incredibly juiced up compared to other Republicans. Because let's take a look here. Republicans who say it's more important to vote in 2026 than the usual midterm election. Look at this. 60% of MAGA identifying Republicans say that, compared to just 36% of non-MAGA. So what's going on in these primaries, right? It's not just that you have this core Republican base that really loves Donald Trump. The people who really love him, they're the ones who are absolutely juiced up to go out and vote. They would go over hot coals to vote in those primaries. And you saw that in Indiana with a clear majority.
Okay, all right, there you go. So 60% of Republicans say that this midterm election is super important to get out and vote, and it is. Just think about what's happening in Wyoming right now. I mean, I can't tell you how many. I'm assuming they're all liberal groups because I haven't looked into all of them. But how many anonymous groups you see on Facebook? And it's like Wyoming United and the Protect Wyoming folks. Well, they're not anonymous, but they're certainly left wing. But there's a whole bunch of them. And, I'm sure many of you are getting text messages to change your voter registration. Democrats are getting text messages to change their voter registration to Republicans. You got to vote in this election. We got to make sure that we bring sanity back to Wyoming. Well, in the midterm elections are a couple of things. First, historically, they have kind of a low voter turnout because you don't have a presidential ticket, and for a lot of voters, that's what drives them going to the polls. And secondly, Republicans have this idiotic belief, and we did this after the 2016 election, but Republicans have this idiotic belief that once our guy is in the White House, everything's good. And we take a step back and we kind of check out for 4 years. Well, the left counts on that, and that's why they really try to turn out the vote during midterm elections. But the numbers from Harry Enton, and again, if they're saying that on CNN, more than likely the numbers are a lot higher. Because this is it. I guess one way to look at this is to say that that's what they had to report. That is the minimum that they had to report to actually, in any way remain credible. And so, you might ask, well, why don't I, choose polling numbers from Fox News or, I don't know, Newsmax or one of those? It's because I think that if I show you what CNN is saying, you can. Implicit in that is, whoa, if the Democrats are saying that, then the numbers are actually quite a bit higher. So anyway, long and the short of it is Donald Trump still super, super popular, no matter what the media tells you, no matter what Tucker Carlson is telling you. And for the record, I used to watch Tucker Carlson religiously back when you actually had to have a DVR. And if I wasn't going to be in the house, I'd make sure I recorded his show on Fox News. And so I could watch it later. So I was a Tucker devotee, and when he got booted off of Fox News, I watched his his show on X. I guess that's mainly, I'm pretty sure that's where I saw most of it. Anyway, I watched his show on X for a while, and then when he went off the rails, that's when I checked out, and I was like, you know what, I'm not watching this anymore. And what did it for me was when he started going after Mark Levin and called him a ghoul. And he said a whole bunch of other stuff. But anyway, despite with those types of people, the left-leaning podcasters and the still never Trump contingent of the Republican Party, despite what they're saying, Trump is still extraordinarily is still popular. And secondly, that among Republicans, excitement about the 2026 midterms is still super high. But again, make sure that we're not among the group of Republicans that sort of checks out and says, oh, everything's good. We don't have to worry about it. And there's another component of this that, wasn't mentioned by the Communist News Network, and I don't think is unique to Wyoming is that the Democrat Party, and I know we don't often think about the Democrats in Wyoming, but we should. If they can turn out hundreds of people at a ridiculously contradictory No Kings protest, then in Sheridan, Wyoming, so 86% of the people that live in Sheridan are registered Republicans. And if the Democrats can turn out a couple of hundred on the courthouse steps to flash Nazi signs and banners that say F Trump on them, if they can pull that off, they're quite a bit more influential than any of us really give them credit for. So, in all of this, don't discount what the Democrats are doing. That they are going to run candidates in a lot of races that we probably didn't even expect them to. So yeah, that's pretty much the long and the short of that piece. So let's move on here. And this is one, God, it seems like every Republican presidency, this sort of thing happens. There is always a talk of amnesty. Oh, well, you got all these people here that they're really good people. They're just, they just work hard and they're doing the jobs that, and I love that line, they're doing the jobs that more normal Americans won't do, but they just happen to be illegal. And so we should give them amnesty. Every Republican administration does this, and it is a mistake every single time because we're told, hey, this is just going to be a one-time amnesty deal. One time. Let's get all the people that are here, and they're just trying to be good Americans. Let's get them legal. And then when there's another Republican president, well, then they'll do the same thing. And so it always happens that way. There is never a change in that whatsoever. But now the Trump administration is they're considering amnesty again. And this showed up in an interview with Tom Homan. And I think that he was on, I can't remember, let's see here. He was on CBS News. And here's what the Breitbart piece says, just the first couple of paragraphs. Border czar Tom Homan told CBS News that President Donald Trump is talking to his advisors about offering some form of legal status to many illegal migrants. A pro-migration reporter at CBS asked Homan on Wednesday, quote, "Would you support a compromise, sir, that involves giving legal status, that is amnesty, to millions of people who are here illegally but are otherwise law-abiding?" Now, as you'll see in the video segment, he says over and over, "I'm not going to get ahead of the president. I'm not going to get ahead of the president." But then he says, "Well, there's discussions taking place in the cabinet," which tells you the people in Trump's cabinet, which we were told are the most conservative people that we could possibly ever see, they're the ones that are saying, hey, boss, can we do some amnesty? Reagan did it before, so it should be okay. Let's do some amnesty. Those are the conversations that are happening. Watch this.
Would you support a compromise, sir, that involves giving legal status to the millions of people who are here illegally but are otherwise law-abiding, including dreamers?
I'm not going to get ahead of the president on that. That's president. I work for the president, so that's.
But something has to be done to address that population, or is the solution to deport them all?
I'm not going to get ahead of the president. That's the president's talking to various members of his cabinet. There's discussions going on.
There it is.
I'm involved with some and not others, but I'm not going to get ahead of the president on this.
18 people have died in ICE custody.
Okay, so then he goes on and on. But you heard what Tom Homan said. Well, there's discussions going on in the cabinet. And again, this is what Republicans always do. With Reagan, it was a one-time amnesty. It happened. And I can't remember if there was an amnesty with Bush, but it wouldn't surprise me with that wet noodle of a... that guy's just spineless. Okay, so the war on terror, not so spineless. But when it came to domestic policy, totally spineless. But it seems that every time we have a Republican president, well, then we have to have some sort of amnesty. And it is a mistake. I don't really care if these people are in the country and they're trying to, they're doing really hard work and they haven't broken any laws recently. They're still here illegally, which means the very first act that they committed, well, even before they were in the country, was to break American law. They entered the country illegally. They absolutely have to be held accountable. And the punishment for that is we deport you. And we absolutely should. All right, my friends. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I see that our pal Joel Guggenmoss has joined the program. So we're going to do that interview a little bit early. But first, let's get a word in from our sponsors. I mean, somebody's got to pay for this whole adventure. Anyway, we'll be back in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Open Line Friday, and so if there's something on your mind that you want to talk to me about, go ahead and give me a ring. The phone number is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. Now, one of my favorite guys in the Wyoming House is named Joel Guggenmoss. He's from Fremont County, and he did me an enormous favor in the last election and got rid of Ember Oakley. Joel, I'm eternally grateful for that one. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Welcome to the program. So it's been quite a while since I've had you on the show. So why don't you give my viewers the couple-minute rundown of who Joel Guggenmoss is?
All right. Joel Guggenmoss. I'm a representative for House District 55, which is basically the town of Riverton, except some of the outskirts. This is my freshman term, and
something happened there. We lost the audio, Joel. There you go.
Are we back?
Yeah, we're back. All right, go ahead.
Oh, weird. Been in Wyoming about 36 years. Lived there, grew up here. Moved back and forth between here and Nebraska a little bit, and South Dakota was my last stint away from here, but I always keep coming back. This is home for me.
All right, great. Well, so you're running for re-election, and so do you have an opponent yet, or is it so far you just you?
Yes, Carl Manning has announced that he's going to be running for the District 55 House seat.
Okay.
And he's a school board trustee. He's been there for like 30 years.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what do you, if you're successful, what are the things that you want to work on in your next term?
Well, I'm hoping I can stay on the Education Committee and the Labor Health Committee, because those are the two committees that I'm on now. And we've been actually able to do some pretty good things in those committees and get some good bills out onto the floor. Not all of them have been successful, but a lot of good progress has been made. Another important thing that I'm working on now is your home title fraud protection.
Oh, yeah, that's a big problem.
Yeah, it's becoming a pretty big issue. It's with AI. It's becoming even more of an issue. It's becoming easier for these people to falsify documents and take out mortgages on your properties. So I wasn't sure how the election was going to go, if I was going to have somebody run against me. Wasn't sure, so I went ahead and submitted a draft proposal to the Joint Corporations Committee, so that they can work through it and hopefully get it past the finish line, regardless of how the election turns out.
Okay, great. Well, one of the big things that we got through education-wise in the last session was the recalibration bill. And I'm still seeing, these education types, and I'm sure mostly it's school board members, claiming that, we don't have enough money now. All of the budget cuts that the recalibration bill put on us. Is that at all true?
There's a lot of complaining, like you said, but I mean, the amount of money that they have received in addition to what they we're talking 236 million or something like that per biennium more. I mean, that's a lot of money, and yet it's still not enough. It's never enough.
Well, no, of course not.
The biggest complaint that I received from the administration and the school districts was the silo. They did not like us siloing the teacher pay to where they could not take from it and put it into something else, like their football field
pads.
Or what they really did not like that. And I'm sorry, but the teachers, they're important and they need to be taken care of. So we did that. So hopefully the teachers will like that.
Well, the school board members definitely didn't like it. And I love this argument, because before we did the recalibration bill, the argument is, well, we just can't pay teachers. We don't have enough money. And then the legislature in 2025 passed that 8.5% raise for all school employees. It wasn't just teachers, it was everybody. Mm-hmm. And then there was only one school district in the entire state that actually gave that raise, and the rest of them, I mean, it was like 2%, 1.6%. The most egregious one was Teton County, and I don't even think they really gave a raise. So you said before you didn't have enough money to pay teachers. We give you money to pay teachers, and you still don't pay them. And then when we silo money demanding that you pay teachers, then you don't have enough money. I mean, it's the classic liberal, circular argument.
It was actually a really good exposure of their MO. It's always more money, and even if they're given more money, they will reallocate it to where it doesn't look like we gave them more money, so they can continue to ask for more money and try to justify it to the people. We're hoping that this silo thing will kind of help with that, to where the people will be able to see what these school districts are trying to do and expose it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I know shortly after that happened, I wrote an op-ed and sent it to the Sheridan Press, and it was, your school district is lying to you, essentially, is what I said. And it was, I attached the graph from the Legislative Service Office that shows exactly who gave, who didn't give all the raises. And you would have thought that I accused them of hating their mother, because the school district exploded. And I think There was even an op-ed that was written in response that was like, Iverson is lying or something. I mean, it was crazy. One of the other bigger problems, and I wanted to talk to you about this, is the rising cost of housing. We hear on the left that we have to have affordable housing, and people just can't afford to live in different places. And to some degree, that's true. I mean, property taxes are through the roof, and still, I mean, even though we passed House Bill, what was it, 45 a couple of years ago. But as I understand it, you and your family were kind of a victim of that rising price of rental properties. Talk to me about that.
Well, we had been in a place for about 7 years in district, and we got a message from the landlady and saying that the cost was going to be going up substantially.
Okay.
There
define substantially. Are we talking like a couple $100? Are we talking like $1,000?
Sixfold. So it would have been up another $1,000 a month.
Wow.
So that came as quite a shock, and it was expected immediately. That was kind of the thing that really was the biggest problem, is because there was no warning. There was no, hey, there's 3 months, 6 months down the road, whatever, then okay, we can plan for this, we can budget for it. But there was nothing.
Uh-oh.
No advance warning. It was just, here it is, and take it or leave it.
So what'd you do?
We had to move. We realized this was not going to work. Looking at the house, if the house had been adequate, we would have stayed, but it wasn't. Not for that amount of money that they were asking. So we began to look for rentals. We looked to buy. We were trying to find something, and it was not an easy process. So we actually had to. There was my family, my parents. They had a camper on their property with an RV site on the property that they said, hey, you need to move in there while you look for another place that's available. So that became our only option. So we did, and sadly, it was outside of our district, the District 55. It was just outside, not very far, but it was just still. So I wasn't sure how that was going to work. So I went ahead and called our LSO staff, and I talked with them saying, okay, so this is a situation. Is this going to be a problem? Now, they obviously can't give personal legal advice. They represent the legislature as a whole. So they basically gave me the rundown of, okay, this is what's happened in the past, because it's happened quite often. Okay, so this is.
Yeah, who can forget the Zwanitzer incident where he bought a different home? I mean, this is quite a bit different.
This was involuntary, and it was not moving into another home. This was living in a camper, very temporarily, till we could find something that was going to work for us. So they basically said, okay, so there's a constitutional side, there's a statutory side, and they don't really mesh. The Constitution is the Constitution would not support vacating somebody's seat if they had to leave for a temporary time. Okay, so they're like, so if somebody tried to force a vacation, it would be very hard and difficult for them to do. It's like, okay. So with that, I was like, okay, we'll just go ahead and probably make the move while we look for something. So we did. So recently, we were finally able to find something that was going to work for us, and we're back in district now. We're back in Riverton. So it got a little interesting here lately. A few days ago, I got a call from a detective from the sheriff's office
Hmm.
said he
Okay.
wanted to talk with me. And I was like, well, okay, what's this in regard to? He's like, well, I can't say that over the
No,
phone.
of course not.
Okay. Well, I was at work at the time, and he was trying to set up a time to meet. And I was like, well, I'm in Lander on a job right now. He's like, well, if it's okay, I'll just come meet you there. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So he showed up in Lander on the job, and we sat down and started talking. And before he got into what he was doing, wanted to talk with me about, which I didn't know what it was.
Sure.
I mentioned our situation. I was like, well, we just moved back into Riverton, had to move out for temporary time due to a housing issue. And he's like, oh, well, that's actually why I'm here. I'm here to investigate where you're living, if you're in district or not. So I went over the whole thing with him and was able to prove, because I actually had a bill with me in the truck that had our new address on it. And so, you know, the investigator seemed like he was satisfied. I told him I talked with LSO. He reached out to LSO. And LSO was like, we can't tell you anything.
Right.
This is confidential information. So the sheriff asked if I would release that, if I'd give a release to the LSO to give him the memo that he'd sent me, and said, sure, I've got nothing to hide. So I signed the release, and LSO shared with the sheriff investigator everything they had told me and sent me in the email. And so I guess we're just kind of waiting to see what happens there. I think he's finished his investigation. I think he's typing it up. We'll see what happens when he gives it to the sheriff.
Well, you know, the reason I know quite a bit about this is I did a gigantic investigation into Dan Zwanitzer. And this is kind of a curious place in Wyoming law, because it is the legislature itself that has jurisdiction in these matters. And, you know, man, I tried to nail Zwanitzer every way that I could. And I actually had, in that case, I had the deed to his new home, which was in a different district. It was in House District 10. I had pictures from a realty website of his old home that was completely vacant. They were trying to sell the house. And I mean, like, I had like all the documents in order. And so when I sent them to the LSO, it turns out it's the House of Representatives that has jurisdiction over that. And so they held a vote and all that, and they swept it under the rug. The difference there is, at least in my mind, and I'm not an attorney, but the difference in my mind is he chose to buy a new house. And then he gerrymandered his old district back in, his new house back into his old district. And the other weird thing, too, is in Wyoming statute, when it talks about residency, there's a phrase in there that says something like, if you intend to return home. So if you live in a place and then maybe you go for a vacation for a month in some other state, but you intend to move back. It's a curious little phrase, but it sounds to me like it's, hey man, this was no fault of your own. Your landlord jacked up your rent, and you got to do something. And you've got kids too, right? It's not just you and your wife.
It's me and my wife now.
Oh, okay.
Her son has moved with his dad in Pennsylvania. So
okay, all right.
It's just the two of us now.
Okay, all right. So, what are you doing campaign-wise? You got your signs out? Have you set up town halls? Talk to me about it.
Haven't done any campaign signs yet. That's kind of in the works, getting locations figured out. Let's see. There are some forums that are planned and are in the planning stages. So I think there's going to be several that we'll be doing throughout the summer. So it should be interesting. Great.
All right. And now, so the question that everybody wants an answer to, and it's extraordinarily unimportant in my mind. So what's your view of the Wyoming Freedom Caucus? Are you a member, not a member?
I am not a member. They did ask me to join, and I respectfully declined. I guess my feeling on that is I wanted well, the people of District 55 elected me. So I want to represent them. And I didn't want there to be any kind of appearance like I was loyal to another group or anything like that. So I declined. I'm representing the District 55.
Yeah,
Now
I always like
the people of the Freedom Caucus, I respect them a lot. We share a lot of the same values. Now I get accused of being Freedom Caucus all the time. The media will say I'm Freedom Caucus. Well, I'm not. If they're not saying I'm a member of Freedom Caucus, they're saying I'm a follower of Freedom Caucus. And it's like, okay, so apparently I can't have my views if they align with the Freedom Caucus views, because then that automatically makes me a Freedom Caucus member.
That's the narrative.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's the narrative they use. Well, all conservatives are, and it's so fallacious that just because you happen to have, you happen to be like-minded as another group, that doesn't mean that you agree on everything, nor does it mean that you're part of their group. I mean, it's the way that they try to paint conservatives, that all of us have horns, and we meet in some smoke-filled room where you can hear whiskey glasses clanking in the background. And it's just a liberal establishment trying to paint conservatives as some sort of, some evil cabal when it's just not when it's not at all true. And the question I always ask people when I get bored on social media, the question I always pose is, give me one example, just one thing of something the Freedom Caucus has pushed through that you disagree with. Just one example will work. And invariably, it's just, I just don't like their tactics. Well, wait a minute. That doesn't have anything to do with how they vote. You don't like election integrity, or you're in favor of killing babies, or what's the deal?
The thing that I equate it to is you've heard of the Trump derangement syndrome. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have the very same thing with people when it comes to the Freedom Caucus. You mention the word Freedom Caucus, and it's like they just go nuts. And it's like, what is going on? I think it's kind of the same type of mentality. It's crazy.
Well, yeah. And it's, frankly, I don't see anything wrong with any of the legislation that the Freedom Caucus has pushed through. Many of the people who are members of the Freedom Caucus, I would consider them friends, definitely acquaintances, but I don't have a problem with any of them. Heck, one of them is my producer. So yeah. It's so stupid.
Well, the crazy thing is those Freedom Caucus members, and I don't even know who they all are who are actual members. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me.
I don't think it matters.
No, but it's like, what I do know is we all ran our campaigns on certain things, certain issues. And I haven't seen any of them deviate from that. So therefore, they were elected to go and address these certain issues that they've been addressing. And people are whining about the Freedom Caucus and their agenda. It's like, well, they campaigned on it. They were elected on it by the people. So basically, they're saying the people don't know what they're doing when they're voting for people like that. It just makes no sense.
Yeah, there was a great article in the Sheridan Press about Agent 29, Representative Pendergraft. And there was a line in it that said, Representative Pendergraft has done exactly what he said he would do. And I was like, I don't know if they thought that was an insult or something, but I thought that was great.
Yeah. Yeah, it proves that we are keeping our word. The Freedom Caucus is keeping their word. The individual members are keeping their word to the people. I'm keeping my word. I am voting the way I campaigned. I'm keeping true to my promises.
Well, as you should. And I think you have. I followed your voting record. Not super close, but largely conservative. You and I are pretty much on the same page on a lot of the big issues, life, guns, all those things. So, listen, Joel, I got to run, but if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that? Uh-oh, I lost your sound again.
That's weird. It just has a mind of its own.
Yeah,
they can call or text 307-488-8564, or they can email me at my legislative joel.guggenmoss@wyoledge.gov.
Right on. Well, Joel, appreciate you joining me this morning, and keep me updated on how your election's going. And I'm sure we'll have you on the program a little bit later. But thanks for joining.
Great. Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
All right. So that was Representative Joel Guggenmoss of Fremont County. And I really like him. First time I interviewed him, it's a great interview. You should go back and listen to it again. But I really like the guy, solidly conservative, and I don't really have any issue with his voting record or anything. And by the way, any of these candidates that we're interviewing throughout the primary election, make sure that you're educated on how they vote, where they vote, and you can find a lot of that information pretty easily. Go to Evidence-Based Wyoming. That's the website I use a lot, but there are others. WyoVote, WyoRhino. There's a whole bunch of them. And the interesting thing is almost all of these rating sites, even though their methodology is different, the people are different, and many of them, I have no idea who runs them. But the interesting thing is all the scores line up. And if you've got source after source after source that's all saying the same thing, there's one of two possibilities. Either A, they're all in it together, which they're not, or B, it's the truth. And so pay attention to the voting record, know who you're voting for. And if you're the part of the group that donates to a lot of candidates, make sure you know who you're writing the check to. A lot of these candidates, they'll show up on your doorstep and they'll say stuff like, oh, hey, I'm pro-life and I love my guns and taxes are too high and government spends too much money and I'm a conservative, so you should vote for me. And then because in Wyoming we're kind of a trusting bunch, we do. And then these people go to Cheyenne and they do exactly the opposite of what they told you. So make sure that you pay attention to the voting record, make sure you know who you're voting for and who you're raising money for if you're doing that. So we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about this gigantic article in the Cowboy where they're defending liberal Wyoming lawyers as if those folks need any defense at all. But we'll do that when we come back. More on Open Line Friday. Back in a minute. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Open Line Friday on the program. If there is something on your mind that you want to talk about, go ahead and give me a call. 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. That'll get you right to me, and whatever you want to talk about, we're on it. So one of the groups that needs no defense, in my opinion, are lawyers. First, I think if you're even a mediocre lawyer, you probably make a heck of a lot more money than most people. And secondarily, these are the people that have access to the courts. And so, we're often told, hey, man, in our system, if you, if you're wrong, you take it to the courts, which is absolutely true. The problem is, though, that lawyers are extraordinarily expensive. And it doesn't even matter if you're completely innocent of what you're being accused of. You still have to pay for a lawyer. You still have to go through the process. You still have to take time off work. So, and all of that is extraordinarily expensive. And so that group of people are the ones that, generally speaking, donate a lot of the money. They're the people that, they can drag you through court for, any length of time. And there's very little that you can do about it. And so when lawyers say stuff like this,
words, as indicated, and I think as most of you know, I'm a lawyer and the candidate and the politician currently serving. You heard Tim
Stubby
do kind of a call out that we need more lawyers perhaps engaging in what we see as this lawfare in order to defend the rule of law, in order to both protect the judicial branch and our democracy. And I think that time is certainly upon us, as Tim indicated. It's not a matter of if, but when and how heavy those attacks are going to come on the
okay, all right.
That's
enough. I mean, there's enough on there to where you've got exactly what she said in context. So can't be accused of taking it out of context. That's what I get accused of all the time. I come up with these outrageous sound bites from these redcoats and, oh, David took it out of context. No, I didn't. That's exactly what she said. And Slithers, Senator Tara Nethercott, is the only person in that call. And what I'm referring to, we played a bunch of this yesterday on the program, but it was a lunchtime call from the Wyoming Trial Lawyers Association. And in it, Tom Lubnow, Tim Stubson, old Stubby, and Slithers Nethercott are talking about all this dark money and how Wyoming elections have changed. And Slithers in the call is the only person that said the word lawfare. And everybody knows what that term means. I mean, it is exactly what has been done to Donald Trump over and over and over, dragging him through the courts, attacking him in every which way possible. Everybody knows what the term lawfare means. And yet the cowpie, Clair McFarland, this has become kind of a ritual on the program. We count how many pages it takes her to say nothing at all. One. And I feel like, they count on Sesame Street. One page, 2 pages. Okay, 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 pages trying to defend Senator Slithers. Well, here's how Clair McFarland starts this out. Quote, while the Wyoming Freedom Caucus is criticizing Senator Slithers Nethercott, okay, it just says Tara Nethercott, for calling lawfare in a speech to attorneys, she said she used the word in a broader context, not about making war on conservative policies, but to defend the rule of law, and she forgot the last thing that she said, and our democracy. So just so we're clear...
as indicated, and I think as most of you know, I'm a lawyer and the candidate and the politician currently serving. You heard Tim
Stubby
do kind of a call out that we need more lawyers perhaps engaging in what we see as this lawfare in order to defend the rule of law, in order to both protect the judicial branch and our democracy. And
Okay, so just so we're clear, she's the one that said lawfare, not anybody else on that call. It was Senator Slithers. Claire McFarland continues. The Wyoming Freedom Caucus posted to social media Tuesday a 15-second audio clip of State Senator Slithers calling for more lawyers to, quote, perhaps engage in what we see as this lawfare in order to defend the rule of law. Now, if there is an argument, and there is later on in this piece, that it is conservatives who are engaging in lawfare against lawyers, that is completely 100% fallacious. Absolutely it is. Predominantly across the entire country, and in a couple of cases in Wyoming, it is liberal attorneys who sue, ridiculously, frivolously, conservatives for trying to access the political process. Mark Elias is probably the biggest one, who, by the way, has been involved in lawsuits in this state and in the Colorado one where they tried to take Trump off the ballot. But it is almost exclusively liberal lawyers that engage in lawfare against conservatives. A good example of that, even though, perhaps there's some dispute in the cow pie about the Freedom Caucus or the Wyoming Freedom PAC putting out that mailer. I was there. I know exactly what that debate was about, and it was about keeping Donald Trump off the ballot, albeit in kind of a twisted path. But there again, that's what the debate was about. And in fact, Agent 29 on the floor said, quote, Agent 29 said on the floor during that debate was, we all know what this budget amendment is about. And so, even though the judge said, hey, this is, I don't really buy, and if I could paraphrase his ruling, basically he said, I don't really buy their argument, but obviously they believe it. So it's not defamation. But the case brought against them, and by the way, Clark Stith, the now Judge Clark Stith, Drag Show Clark, he knew that he wasn't going to win that defamation case, but they filed it anyway. Because, and the reason he knew that is if you're a public figure, the bar is so high for defamation that, you have to show absolute harm. Both J.T. Larson and the mad leprechaun Cody Wiley won their election. So obviously the mailers didn't work and they weren't harmed. So can't be defamation. But the important point is who filed the lawsuit? Who were the legislators that were suing? It wasn't conservatives. It was liberal drag show Clark Stith. And again, there are other examples, but that's probably the most prominent one. But predominantly across the country, it is liberal lawyers that are involved in this lawsuit, in lawfare. And that Slithers herself was the one that brought the term up. The cow pie really doesn't have any defense, even though they spend 8 or 9 pages doing it. Now, in 2024, I interviewed Harmeet Dillon. And she was very much involved in the Colorado case to remove Trump off the ballot. But we spoke briefly about lawfare. Here is what Harmeet Dillon had to say on Cowboy state politics.
Bank is they invested in a network of nonprofits. And I put that in air quotes because these nonprofits are actually very largely political in what they do. And if we had any guts on the right, we'd be investigating and prosecuting that when we control the White House, but we don't. And so there's like hundreds of nonprofits that are funded to do work that is political in nature. I'm currently fighting cases in DC with supposed nonprofits, some of them venerable and definitely preceding this issue, but who are basically happy to take money from the left to challenge election laws, to smear people, to go after people, to gum up the works with costly litigation, to slow down political campaigns with frivolous litigation. Frivolous, if it gets kicked out of court more times than it sticks, I consider that to be pretty frivolous. And a lot of this stuff, Mark Elias gets a, reputation for being very litigious. Most of his cases get kicked out because they're garbage. And so that said, it's very effective politically because you're forcing the other side to raise and spend money. You're tying them up in court instead of, being out on the campaign trail. So it's an effective decoy tactic. But it reaches down to the very level of we have violent thugs. We have a militia of Marxists and leftists and nihilists in this country. Antifa is one wing of it, but I would argue BLM, and I would argue that many of the activists who are organizing the protests on college campuses today, they're all part of the same system, the same continuum of disruptors. But if you actually get into a legal tangle with these people or they get arrested, there's a whole legal apparatus behind them. So I've know this from suing Antifa, Rose City Antifa in Portland for attacking my client, journalist Andy No, who bravely exposes Antifa. And each of those Antifa thugs who we sued had a law firm jumping up to pay magically. And like, it's all funded. It all traces back to these same sources. There are generous donors on the left who have created a machine. So I sued violent rioters in San Jose when they attacked Trump supporters during a Trump rally in 2016. They all showed up. I mean, I'm talking about teenage refugees, shiftless, sort of future gangbangers. They showed up with prominent liberal attorneys from the Bay Area, respected attorneys who don't work for free typically. So it has practical consequences on our side when some of the January 6th arrestees simply walked into a building with the doors open.
This is pretty good.
Okay, some of them did things that were wrong. You don't break the windows of Congress. You don't get violent with police. That's wrong. But some of them committed what looks like speech to me. And they've had a very hard time finding competent legal counsel because these cases are brought in DC. There's only a handful of lawyers I would even recommend there. And there wasn't an army of lawyers behind them to help. And so a lot of injustice has occurred as a result of that. That doesn't happen on the left. There's no left-wing activist protester who can't find a lawyer quickly. Even when they're violent, they break the law.
We see the same thing in Wyoming. Okay, so the rest of the interview kind of drifts into funding of left-wing funding of elections, but the point is that if you're on the left, there's no problem finding an attorney, and all you got to do is listen to that entire call. And by the way, later on the Open Range record, I'm going to publish that entire call so you can listen to exactly what was said. Even though in the beginning they're like, "Well, this is supposed to be private and off the record." Sorry, Jack. It's a public meeting, and once your private affair gets out in the public, well, you're an attorney. It's now public, and so I'm going to go ahead and publish the whole darn thing so that you can listen to them say things like, "We have to defend our democracy." We don't live in a democracy, and an attorney, somebody who is sworn to defend the Constitution, who presumably was educated on the Constitution, though I think if you look at the actions of a lot of left-wing attorneys, it's been a really long time since they've ever read the Constitution, and they still think. And I've got a piece in the stack of stuff. Actually, it's right on top here from Harrison. I really like his columns, but he points out that a lot of attorneys believe that the Constitution is a living document. And what that term means is, the Constitution is meant to change with the times. It's the founders could have never envisioned our country the way that it is here, so we have to change. It has to change. That's not true at all. The Constitution means what it says, and it doesn't say what it doesn't say. And proof that our founders were, well, one, they were brilliant, but proof of their brilliance is that some of the things written in the Constitution are pretty darn vague. Like, for example, what is cruel and unusual punishment? What the heck does that mean? Well, our founders were smart enough to know that what may have not have been cruel and unusual in 1789 would probably be considered cruel and unusual in 2026. So that changes. But there are other things that are very, very, very specific. So, for example, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I mean, that's very specific. Or the right to a trial by jury, or the right to confront one's accuser. Those things are, or no general warrants. Okay, those things are very specific, and it tells you that the people that wrote that document had the foresight to know that things were going to change, and so that any lawyer that says well, it's a living document, a living constitution. That's code language for I don't really believe in it. Now, the question I asked on the program yesterday was, are there actually any attorneys that were taught that we live in a republic and not a democracy? Because in that call, which if you pay attention to the open range record a little bit later on today, I'm going to publish that whole call so you can listen to it. But in there, you can hear at least a couple different attorneys. Bill Schwartz was the guy from Jackson. He's the guy that hosted the thing. He says we live in a democracy. Senator Slithers says we have to defend our democracy. And so there's at least 2-3 lawyers that say exactly the same thing, that, we have to defend our democracy. Well, really what they mean, when you hear that, what the person saying it means is we have to defend the democracy that we are trying to create. We have to defend what we are doing to the republic. That's what that means. And of course, we don't live in a democracy. We never have. We live in a republic, and any attorney worth their salt should know that. So let's go ahead and take a call. Jesse Rubino from Cheyenne. Jesse, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great this morning, David. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, ripping on lawyers. So, I mean, it's a good day on the program.
Well, as an attorney myself, I welcome the lawyer jokes, and it's a profession that is unfortunately deserving of a lot of flack right now. So I thought I would answer some of your questions. I know that you were curious as to whether the UW College of Law teaches future attorneys that we live in a republic.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I did not learn that. I did not learn that at law school at UW.
What? How could that possibly be? Did you learn that it's a democracy, or did they just kind of gloss over that part of the Constitution?
So I'll start with this. I was born and raised here in Wyoming, so everything I say is verifiably true, and you cannot disagree with me. Right? That's how it works. But no, that was never a part of our curriculum in constitutional law. The professor for that class taught us that the Constitution, as you were just discussing, we were taught that it's a living document.
Of course you were.
This guy even went so far as to say that the age requirements for office don't mean anything because people from different cultures don't celebrate birthdays the same way we do.
Wow.
And so potentially a 15-year-old Arab could run for president because it doesn't really matter what 35 means. So that was our constitutional law class. And as an aside, we're told that, the University of Wyoming is a great economic development boon. Our professor for that class lived in Denver and commuted to Laramie for teaching the class. So I don't know if we're helping Wyomingites find good jobs or Coloradans, but that's how that class shook out.
So I mean, I'm curious. Was your constitutional law professor a guy named Ken Chestek?
No. So Professor and now Representative Chestek, he taught legal writing. I did not have him. My husband had him. But we got to take a nice long trip with him to Omaha, Nebraska for a negotiation competition that we did. And, we don't agree on anything practically, but it was a good time riding in the car with him for all those many hours to Omaha.
The truth is, I've had lunch with Representative Chestek, and though he and I don't agree on anything, we had a pleasant conversation, and we were over at the Taco John's around the corner from the Capitol. But, personally, I like talking to the guy. He's just profoundly misguided on a whole bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, I prefer an honest Democrat any day over a lying Republican.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, let's in full transparency, though the cow pie is trying to say that, publishing a call that was delivered to a journalist is somehow, against transparency. But in all transparency, you are the executive director of the Freedom Caucus, right?
Yeah, I'm the state director for Wyoming for the State Freedom Caucus Network, but I'm not from D.C. I was born and raised about 5 blocks from where I sit right now in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
All right. So, in that call, and you guys published, a brief soundbite of it, which, by the way, there isn't any more context that you could have added to there, though I played some of it, on about a minute on either side so you could tell what Slithers was talking about. But when I say the term lawfare, what does that mean to you, Jesse? Like, as a lawyer in your position, what does the term lawfare mean?
Well, and I don't need to preface it with as a lawyer because everybody knows what that term means. It's become increasingly popular. We've seen it at the national level. It's weaponizing the legal system to hurt somebody that you don't like. We see it in Cheyenne right now. We've seen the local health officials weaponize the legal system to try to shut down a farm stand. We've seen it happen to parents that were targeted by Biden's DOJ. It happens at every level of society, unfortunately. And as Ken always says, or Agent 29 always says, words mean things. And if anybody knows what words mean when they use them, it's somebody who practices law. That's one of the things. I received a great legal education, I will say. I learned how to communicate clearly, how to think critically, and that's something attorneys know. When she used the word lawfare, she knew what it meant. And in the context of the call, they were discussing the now dismissed defamation case against the Y Freedom PAC. They were discussing the multiple lawfare cases against the Wyoming Republican Party. They're meant to drain resources through the use of the legal system to punish your opponent.
Yeah. Now, another question I have for you, Jesse, and I'm so glad that you called in, is in Wyoming, we have a deficit. Deficit is probably putting it lightly. There are not that many conservative attorneys, and I can only think of a couple of them. Why do you think that is?
David, I think there are actually a lot more conservative attorneys than any of us are even aware. But the problem is that the bar, like every other institution, it's become ideologically captured. And there is a very reasonable fear among conservative attorneys that if they poke their head up and make a stand for constitutional, conservative, normal people values, that the bar will come down on them. We've seen this happen to Fred Harrison. The bar and its most prominent members have openly attacked him for just trying to defend preborn babies. We saw it happen with Harriet Hageman when the bar came out and multiple prolific members essentially threatened her law license for claiming what we all know is true, that the 2020 election was rigged. So I think there's a lot more conservative attorneys than we give them credit for. They're all just working, putting food on the table for their families, and they don't want the bar to come after their license, which is, their tool for making a living for their family.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, when Harriet and I've talked about this, maybe not at length, but it seems to me, and there's a couple of people that you and I both know that have had the Wyoming bar go after them. And it's, and let me just say this. I think when anybody acts unethically, they should take responsibility for that. But when you are just doing your job and you are, acting, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. I don't think that we should go after people and try to allege unethical behavior when it's not there. And in several different cases in Wyoming, I can think of at least a couple of attorneys that have had to face what you were referring to, the wrath of the Bar Association, for pretty much minor stuff that wouldn't warrant taking somebody's career away from them.
The environment that we're in is very chilling for conservatives, and I'll point you to an example back during the COVID years. My second half of law school was spent all on Zoom. I had Zoom law school because of COVID, and during that last year, we had to take a course on professional responsibility. The professor for this course was an adjunct professor. I will not name her, but we were all on Zoom, so everybody's in their own house. You can see everyone's background. One of my classmates had a Trump flag on his wall, and this professor stopped mid-lecture and informed the class that she could not continue on until this student either turned off his camera or removed his Trump flag because it was too distracting.
Wow.
And, this is our professional responsibility class. These are people about to enter the legal profession and join the Wyoming bar, and this is the type of environment that we're about to enter, is someone unable to continue speaking because they see a Trump flag. So it's just an uncomfortable environment for conservatives. I think there's a lot more conservative attorneys than we're aware of, but they make it scary, and it's very chilling to want to speak out as a conservative.
Well, yeah, and I know that there's I know a guy in Sheridan that he's just a your small town everyday attorney, and he flat told me that if you're a conservative in Wyoming, it's going to be pretty hard to get clients if you can keep your license. And so I think that's just wrong, and that the legal profession itself is just pretty liberal. I mean, all the way around. And it's from the level of, in my opinion, your small town lawyer all the way up to the attorneys general.
Yeah, and it's a shame that it's that way, because I think, like most people, young people, they go to law school because they want to help people. The same thing with teachers. I also attended the College of Education at the University of Wyoming. People want to become teachers because they want to help kids. And I think a lot of times, because these institutions are ideologically captured, they take young people, and if they don't have a lot of discernment, or like me, if they don't have parents that raise them listening to Rush Limbaugh every day to and from school, they get in there and it's really easy to get twisted around. We should trust our professors. I wish we could trust them, but we're at a point now where these people and these institutions just take advantage of young minds and spin them into something that turns out to be really dark and damaging.
Absolutely. And, a good example of that is when the legislature told the university, hey, we're done with all this DEI stuff and we're doing away with that department. Well, what the university did is they did do away with the department, but they kept all the programs and they moved them to different schools, as if somehow we weren't going to find out that all those things still exist. They were just moved around a little bit. I mean, that's what the university does. And I don't think there's any question about it that Wyoming, the University of Wyoming, is one of the more liberal schools, definitely in the West, perhaps in the country.
Yeah, I would agree. And after having spent, I spent 7 years there for undergraduate and law school, it got steadily more liberal as I went there. When I was a junior, we started the Turning Point USA chapter in Laramie, and we hosted Dennis Prager. And it was at that point that I really realized just what conservative students are up against. It was the whole coalition of the dispossessed came out to try to keep anti-Semitic Dennis Prager off the campus, and he ended up coming. It was a great event. He spoke about socialism and why it makes people selfish, but that's what really woke me up to just how captured the university has become. And it's a shame because, I love UW. I'm a proud graduate of the institution, and I wish that the Wyoming Business Council and the press, everyone talking about brain drain, young people leaving. I wish they'd talk to people like me and my husband and other people in my situation, because we went to UW. We love it. We're never going to leave. But instead, they like to talk to the individuals who have a negative perception of the state. And I think there's a lot more people like me than we realize.
Well,
they're all just busy raising kids.
Well, let's hope there's a whole bunch more people and lawyers who think like you. Well, Jesse, I appreciate you calling in. Thank you for answering my question. And now we know that you can't learn that this is a republic at the University of Wyoming.
No, nor can you in public school, because I was also taught I was taught to teach that we have a democracy when I was getting my secondary education social studies degree. So there's nowhere you can go, David. There's just nowhere you can go. Homeschool your kids.
Well, there is some place you can go to learn that, and it just so happens to be Cowboy state politics. Well, Jesse, thanks for calling in.
Yep.
I appreciate it. Have a good weekend,
thanks,
my friend.
David. You too. Bye-bye.
All right, that was Jesse Rubino, who is the state director for the Wyoming Freedom Caucus. And we did learn something. At the University of Wyoming, you cannot learn that we live in a republic. You have to learn that we live in a democracy, which, of course, is buffoonery. Okay, so back to the cow pie article. Now, it goes on for pages and pages and pages and pages, but it is the last one that I find to be far more interesting than all the rest of them. And by the way, I don't understand why you think, why Clair McFarland thinks that she has to defend liberal Wyoming lawyers. I mean, she spends 8 pages doing it. But there is a section right at the end, and probably the reason why these sorts of things end up at the end of an 8-page article is most people are not going to make it to the end. And if you're wondering why all the articles on the Cow Pie and at other news outlets, not all of them, some others, get so long, it's to help them in the search engine. So the more words you have, there's more words available for Google to search, and that, presumably somebody may be searching for something else and they come upon your article and maybe they'll read it. But that's why these articles are so long. It's not out of necessity. It's out of a desire to get clicks and views and all that. But all the way at the end, it says this: Bear, in his text message to the Cow Pie, and this is John Bear she's referring to, also responded to a statement Lubnow had made in the call that the Wyoming Freedom PAC's method of running a statewide campaign on a myriad of issues for a slate of candidates was novel in Wyoming. And it's not, by the way. Lubnow is full of crap on this one. But here's what Bear responded to. It has been done before, over and over, said Bear, pointing to the Wyoming Hope PAC, Americans for Prosperity, and Governor Mark Gordon's PAC, or his Prosperity and Commerce PAC. What a stupid name for a political organization, PAC. Anyway, and the governor's PAC, which garnered controversy in 2024. Now, this is Clair McFarland's comment, and it's the last 2 sentences of the piece. Quote, the Wyoming's iteration is run by multi-generational Wyomingite and former state senator, state representative Tyler Lindholm. Americans for Prosperity is based in Virginia. Okay, that's true. They get their money from the national outfit, and it doesn't make any difference that Tyler Lindholm runs it. He's as left as you could possibly get. I mean, he's over there with Mark Elias and support. And by the way, it was Americans for Prosperity that support all of the liberal incumbents in the state. But that's the last sentence. Listen to this. Quote, Wyoming Hope and Prosperity and Commerce are both based in Wyoming. But here's the dirty little secret that Clair McFarland is not going to tell you. Do you know who funds Wyoming Hope, or who their biggest funder is? It's B. Wayne Hughes, to the tune of $560,000. B. Wayne Hughes is the owner of the Cow Pie. That's why Clair McFarland did not tell you where Wyoming Hope's money comes from. And by the way, B. Wayne Hughes is not from Wyoming. He's originally from California. And so if you're wondering why a lot of the articles show up in the Cow Pie the way that they do, maybe it's because the owner of the outfit is from California, is a California billionaire. But think about that. Clair McFarland, who I don't know if she's their chief political reporter or what her title is, but she writes a lot of politics pieces for the Cow Pie. She knows darn good and well who Wyoming Hope is, and yet she defends them because that's the guy that owns the Cow Pie. And so, a lot of this stuff, a defense of lawyers in the Cow Pie, give me a break. And to defend the term lawfare is absolutely amazing. When you read into the middle of this thing, not that I'm suggesting you do that, but when you read into the middle of this piece, McFarland actually attempts to defend Slithers in her using that term. Well, everybody knows what that term means. It's weaponizing the legal system to hurt your opponent. That's what it is. And everybody knows what it is, and the vast majority of people are absolutely opposed to it. So let's go ahead and take our third break. When we come back, we'll finish up the program. It's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. Back in a minute. I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is expanding faster than, well, quite frankly, the left ever thought it would. Good news for us. So every time you listen to an episode or watch part of the program, make sure that you like and that you share it and that you're leaving me a review. It really helps, and I appreciate it. I know. Everybody says that, but it's absolutely true. There's a reason why everybody says it, because it helps get the word out about your program to people who have yet to experience how incredible Cowboy state politics is. From the Turkey Vulture, from Fred Harrison, the heroism of the text redeeming of Wyoming's courts. And he begins this way, and I quote, "A free society resolves its most profound moral cases not through the exertion of physical force, but through the rigorous application of law and reason. To defend the sanctity of life in a constitutional republic, we must rely entirely on the intellect, the text, and the structural brilliance of the system our founders left us. Today, our republic faces two distinct threats: the reckless rhetoric of the mob on the outside and the quiet arrogance of the illegal elite on the inside. That is, Senator Slithers, Tom Lubnow, Tim Stubbson, old Stubby, and the rest of them, Bill Schwartz and all of them. The Wyoming Supreme Court Justice Carrie Gray, through her solitary and heroic dissenting opinion in State v. Johnson, has provided the exact blueprint we need to redeem our courts. To understand the magnitude of her dissent, we must first examine the dangerous philosophies she's fighting against." And he already mentioned them. The disservice of the mob. Now, the mob is the cacophony of all of these other people swearing up and down that somehow abortion is health care. If indeed, if they make that argument, then they should be able to defend while it is the only so-called medical practice that ends up in the death of one of the patients. That, by definition, is not caring for one's health. It is the exact opposite. The other thing that he mentions is the vandalism of the elite. And this is kind of where we're focusing on today's program. So let me just read this part to you. Quote, if the mob threatens the republic with violence, the legal elite threaten it with a far more insidious poison, judicial arrogance. Recently, I've heard lawyers refuting me say the Constitution is a, quote, living thing designed to meet the needs of a progressive society. You just heard Jesse Rubino tell you that that's what she learned in law school. Of course, it's, sophistry, but that's what she learned anyway. Here's what Fred Harrison says. To say that the Constitution is a living document is to say that it is a dead Constitution. This sounds like a paradox, but it is a fundamental truth of law. The entire purpose of a written Constitution is to act as an anchor, not a weather vane. We don't lick our fingers and hold them up into the wind to figure out which way the political winds are blowing that day. It is deliberately designed to restrict government power and impede change, preventing the political passions of the moment for overriding fundamental rights. If a constitution lives, and if its words magically mutate to accommodate whatever a judge decides a progressive society needs today, then it ceases to function as a restraint. It is dead. A referee who alters the dimensions of the field in the middle of a game is no longer applying the rules. He's just dictating the final score. When a judge embraces the living document philosophy, they cease to be a neutral umpire and become a robed politician. It is a blank check for judicial tyranny. Think about it this way. I'm a big baseball fan, and I constantly use baseball metaphors. One, because I think it's like the most perfect game ever designed, and secondly, I love it. But how ticked off do we get when an umpire doesn't really have a strike zone? I mean, last year there was an umpire that made bad call after bad call and after bad call, and he was pilloried in all the sports pages and social media, and hopefully he got fired. But what did Major League Baseball do in response? Well, they set up a challenge system to where if you thought something that was called a strike was actually a ball, well, you could challenge it. And each team gets 2 challenges in 9 innings. And that has been, well, I don't know that I kind of like it because you can challenge an umpire's call, but I'm sort of a traditionalist when it comes to baseball. That is if you have umpires that are trying to be fair and you're not hometowning the other team. But Major League Baseball instituted the challenge system. And there you can see it on the screen. It's the box that you see when the pitch comes in. Even a pitch that just slightly grazes the strike zone is a strike. So why did they do that? Because they didn't want umpires changing the strike zone, rigging the game, changing the outcome of the game based on their strike zone. They didn't want any of that. They wanted a rigid system to this is the strike zone, and it's not going to change. Now, the reality of it, and here's the downside, is that the strike zone does change with the person. So if you're a really tall person like, Randy Johnson. Randy Johnson is a really tall guy. Well, generally speaking, the strike zone is from right below your shoulders to your knees. That should be the strike zone. And then, of course, it has to be, horizontally over the plate. But that's the strike zone. Now, if you get a really short guy, well, his strike zone is going to be right here to his knees. But it can't be a set place. And this is, again, my argument against the whole challenge system. You have to look at things from both sides. It changes with the person. One of the reasons why Ricky Henderson, my childhood baseball hero, walked so many times is he had a really small strike zone. His stance was really short. And so, to strike him out, you basically had this much of a distance to throw a strike in there. So, there are downsides to it. But the point I'm getting at is Major League Baseball decided, no, this is the strike zone. This is where we got to keep the pitches. Similarly, the Constitution sets the strike zone. That's what it is. It keeps everybody honest. And if you're going to argue that the strike zone, as I just did with baseball, changes from day to day, then it's no longer a rule book. It's no longer it's no longer where the goalposts are, even though that's mixing analogies, but mixing metaphors rather. But my point is that the Constitution, as Fred Harrison says, sets the rules of the game. And if the rules of the game change from day to day, depending on your progressive whim, then they aren't rules at all. And that's what we're seeing. Now, the biggest example of this, and it doesn't really matter where you land on this whole abortion issue. We can all agree that the Wyoming Supreme Court wrote into law that abortion is health care. They did, without a doubt. That phrase does not appear anywhere in Wyoming statute. It only appears in that court ruling in State v. Johnson. And what Fred Harrison is arguing is it took great courage for Kerry Gray to say, no, read the rest of Article 1, Section 38. It says the legislature can make restrictions on the right, which it does. The Supreme Court ignored it. And when we ignore what's written in the text, well, then the text becomes absolutely meaningless. Now, another attorney that I have great admiration for is Alan Dershowitz. And he was recently on the Podforce One podcast. I can't keep up with all these podcast names. But he says that he's been a Democrat for over 70 years. And now he's strongly opposed to the Democrat Party, mostly because of what they've done to the legal system and and what they're attempting to do to the country. But he says that the Democrats actually scare him, and he gives some reasons why. So here, let me play for you what he said. I really appreciated his comments here. Here's Alan Dershowitz, constitutional attorney. Maybe.
I feel like I'm in 1932 Berlin at the standing up against what was going on. Not 1938. I'm not saying 1938, but in 1932, before the election of Hitler as chancellor, the universities were turning against Jews. If there was Israel, they'd have been turning against Israel. And I feel I'm one of the few people who am standing up against my old party. Look, I became a Democrat when I was 14 years old. I used to go with a loudspeaker and campaign for a guy named Philip Schuppler, who was running for assembly on the Democratic ticket. So I've been a Democrat for 70 years. I now am strongly opposed to that party. I want them defeated in every single election. Not everyone. There are a few. There's this Senate congressman from New Jersey. There's a couple of Congress people from other places that I want to see elected, but I want to see the Democrats lose control of the House and lose control of the Senate and lose control of the presidency, because I am scared of them. They are against America. They're against Israel. They're against Jews. And the leading people against the Jews are other Jews. Thank God for Christians and Muslims who support Israel. Israel cannot count on its Jewish population. Many support Israel. Most support Israel. But some of its most vociferous opponents, organizations like Jewish Voice for Peace, which isn't Jewish and doesn't have a voice and is against peace, but they are leading the campaign against Israel, along with a group like the Neturei Karta, very, very ultra-Orthodox anti-Zionists who support Iran, who want Iran to get a nuclear bomb. These are just self-defeating, self-hating idiots. And I'm going to stand up against them. I'm 87 years old. I don't have the strength I had when I was 47, but I'm going to use every bit of strength I have to oppose the Democrats.
And that's what we got to do. Yeah, I mentioned earlier on in the broadcast that we've got to oppose the Democrat Party, and if they're able to get a couple of hundred people on the courthouse steps in Sheridan, Wyoming, well, then we might have a bigger problem on our hands than we think. So let's go ahead and take another call. Neil from Casper. Neil, how's it going today? How are you, my friend?
Always good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. What's on your mind?
Hey, I just wanted to call in, and you're talking about these people talking about democracy. I was just wondering, when they say the Pledge of Allegiance, do they say, I pledge allegiance to the democracy or a republic?
Good point. It's to the republic.
Yeah. So, and then I had a second thing I'd like to talk about.
Okay. What do you got?
I went to, in Laramie, they had this mining conference by the Wyoming Energy Authority.
Okay.
Like the 5th and 6th. And I went there, and I thought I was going to a legitimate mining conference, but I didn't realize, I come to find out, it was a corporate welfare conference.
Really? What happened?
Well, you have a lot of big business kind of over there just circling the wagons looking for subsidies. You know, $19 billion, billion-dollar company getting a $100 million handout from the state.
Yeah.
They said there's risk in this, so, you know, the taxpayers got to take the risk.
Yeah, it's absolutely bizarre, Neil. You know, it used to be that business people took risks, but now we seem to think that, you know, if you're going to do a $100 million deal, or, you know, it doesn't really matter what the dollar number is, the taxpayers have to subsidize it. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why I'm frustrated with the energy dominance bill, because that's exactly what it was. I mean, it's welfare for the well-connected. And it's, you know, it doesn't seem to matter if they have $1 billion company. Somehow they still need taxpayers to underwrite it. When it used to be, if you were a business person and you had an idea and you want to go into business, you go to a bank and the bank underwrites it. And then it's up to you to, you know, to succeed or fail. But that's another problem with all these windmills and, I mean, you know, any of these renewables, that they're all subsidized. I mean, it's not private business. It's government adventurism, and it's wrong.
It's not the role of government. That's just the comments I wanted to hit today. So I appreciate the show and the time. So have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for calling in, Neil. I appreciate it. You know, Neil is absolutely right that any of this corporate welfare, it is not the role of government. There is nowhere in our Constitution, in the Wyoming Constitution or the U.S., that says that government should be in the middle of business. But we've created the situation where people like Josh Durrell and the Wyoming Business Council say that, you know, the only way that we can compete is if we have government involvement. And that's just not true at all. There are businesses that open every single day that haven't taken a dollar from government that do just fine. And often, and I think this is probably one of the more important points, that more often than not, and you kind of heard this in though in a different context in the Harmeet Dillon piece, she said that more often than not, they fail rather than succeed. And that seems to be the track record with the Wyoming Business Council. And I won't argue that there have been some successes, but the question is, if those were successes, would those businesses have come here regardless? I mean, if the conditions were right and the workforce was right, and the tax environment and tax and regulatory environment was to the business's liking, what's to say that they wouldn't have come here on their own? And I think that there's a good argument to be made that they would. And why does government need to get involved in it? Well, it's to give tax breaks. And you know what we find is we end up giving tons and tons and tons of taxpayer money to businesses that should be able to afford to move anywhere they want. It's like BWXT over in Gillette. They don't need $100 million of your and my money. I mean, they've got it sitting in the bank account. But like our caller Neil said, man, it's the taxpayer underwriting the underwriting the risk. And quite frankly, I mean, that's not how our system was set up. It's not the role of government, and it's not it's not a proper use of your money at all in any way. So one more piece before I let you go for this morning. I've been trying to kind of ease up on at the end of the program, leave you on a high note. You know, oftentimes I get accused of being the little black rain cloud in the room. But a funny story about my old man, about the elder Mr. Iverson. He used to own a silkscreen business, and he and I built a website for him so he could get some orders from online. And believe it or not, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals placed an order with him at one point, and they wanted, I think it was for 24 shirts. And so the way the website was set up is you place your order, and then Dad would contact you and do the shirts, and then you would pay him. And once he got your credit card payment, then he'd ship the order. Well, for PETA, He didn't print the design they wanted. In fact, the shirt said "People who eat tasty animals," and he sent them to him. And he wasn't expecting to get paid, but he did. Now, recently there was a protest outside of a Pepsi. I don't know if it was a factory or distribution outfit, but some of these PETA protesters put their feet in concrete in the in the street, so it couldn't access the Pepsi factory. But here they are, the PETA idiots protesting and concreting their feet so they can't be moved. Check this out. Maybe. There we go.
Folks, you're going to have to move. You're going to have to move. You're on private property. Just get in. Or you'll get caught. Okay?
Yeah, smart. There's more gallons. Okay.
Now dumping fake blood on the street. It wouldn't be a PETA protest without it.
Honey, grab the stuff. What's that cost? All the views and bodies lost. Practitioner, what's the cost? All the views and bodies lost. Practitioner, what's the cost? All the views and bodies lost. Practitioner, what's the cost?
Oh my God. Okay, I can't take it anymore. All right. Well, there's your protesters concreting their feet so they couldn't be moved. Now, in the end, here's a piece from Breitbart talking about this whole incident. The animal rights activists, clad in bull horns, not with bull horns, but had helmets with horns on them, blocked the entrance to PepsiCo headquarters in Purchase on Wednesday. Purchase is the name of the town. During a multinational food and beverage corporation's virtual annual shareholder meeting. Video from the scene captured the chanting protesters spilling fake blood on the roadway and their shoes stuck in cement blocks as cars honked and cops demanded them scurry. Firefighters later arrived to drill and break the concrete blocks from the protesters' feet. Some of them were seen being taken by ambulance to the hospital after the ordeal. One officer was heard accusing the fake blood-drenched Klan of trying to stage a, quote, photo op while warning them to stop the protest. 6 protesters were arrested and charged with criminal mischief, disorderly conduct, and criminal tampering. The spectacle was staged to urge PepsiCo to stop sourcing sugar from partners and suppliers in India, where PETA claims that bulls are beaten, whipped, and forced to haul illegally overloaded sugarcane carts in extreme heat. Well, I hope all those people that went to the hospital with concrete burns learned their lesson. They were dumb enough to do that in the first place, so I'm guessing probably not. I want to leave you with one last thought. We started out early on in the program talking about the support of Donald Trump that is still there to the tune of 85% of Republicans, and how turnout, actually, in other state primaries has been pretty high. But the Indiana primary should be a wake-up call, and that's the big one everybody's talking about, where all the redcoats got beat out of their seat, should be a call for Senate rhinos to pass the SAVE Act. And this is from the Federalist. And I quote, "Hopefully, senators starring in the future theater production of Debating the Save America Act heard Indiana's message loud and clear. Indiana conservatives just sent a message to rhinos everywhere. FAFO. These voters are mad, and they're not going to vote for spineless Republicans anymore. Hopefully, the GOP senators performing in the failure theater production will understand that. Most of the Republican Indiana State Senate candidates endorsed by President Donald Trump won their primary races Tuesday against incumbents who voted with Democrats to stop the congressional redistricting bill. As of late Tuesday evening, the New York Times election results showed challengers picked up at least 5 of the 7 state Senate seats targeted by Trump and other conservative groups. Republican primary voters rejected politicians standing on fairness principles, while Democrats employ every weapon in their political arsenal to wrest back control of the U.S. House. Let's see here. Trump and his political action committee allies are ready to spend to jettison Republicans who don't see the next two election cycles as existential battles, and they have a lot of money to take on rhinos and leftists headed into the midterms. And so, it doesn't really matter what the cow pie is saying or the rest of the liberal media. The truth is that Republican voters are mad and they're not going to take it anymore. And so if you're a redcoat, and everybody knows that you're a redcoat, and you're one of these idiots that talks about lawfare on a call and then complains later when you're exposed, you got another thing coming, and you should really worry. You should try to find another job because you're going to be out of yours pretty soon. And I fully expect that will be the case in Wyoming. It's going to be a wake-up call for a lot of these rhinos and all of the better Wyoming Liz Store-funded crowd that think that they've got this election in the bag. I think they're sadly mistaken. Well, my friends, we've burned through another busy broadcast week on the program. Make sure that you don't miss Weekend Update tomorrow. It's going to be another excellent podcast, so make sure that you join us. And for now, my friends, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.